This is Kristian Laight, the man with the most losses in professional boxing history. And fighters like this tend to baffle the general public. Why can some boxers have so many losses? Is it because they're absolutely terrible boxers, incapable of winning fights? Are they throwing fights? Are they, as many people who have never laced a pair of gloves like to say, bums? And why would anyone willingly step into the ring hundreds of times and lose almost every time? Now, Kristian Laight is a journeyman, and there are tons of journeymen in boxing. Now, this video is only going to speak from my own experiences in the UK with journeymen, but journeymen worldwide are an essential part of professional boxing. And without guys like this, boxing wouldn't be able to thrive as it does. But why are people fighting so often and losing so often? Are they actually any good? What is the reason for journeymen in boxing? Well, it's actually quite a complicated situation. Firstly, we need to talk about how you actually become a professional boxer, because you need to get your license in the UK by the British Boxing Board of Control. Every single professional boxer in the UK has to have previous boxing experience before they get their professional license. Historically, this can be on the white collar scene, but most notably through the amateurs. As an amateur, you'll first get experience and then be put into tournaments where you can fight anyone. For instance, in my amateur career, I boxed Lewis Richardson, who went on to win an Olympic bronze medal, multiple national champions, or future professionals. It doesn't matter what your record is as an amateur, you're solely getting experience. And it's somewhat similar on the white collar scene. You have fighters like Fabio Wardley, who have come from white collar to challenging Alexander Usyk potentially for the heavyweight title. However, it is preferred on the whole to get your license granted if you have the backing of solid amateur experience. However, turning professional isn't a foregone conclusion. You have to first apply for your license, and then you have to have a sit-down meeting with the British Boxing Board of Control where they will assess your previous experience and deem whether you're worthy to become professional or not. Now, it's a lot more common for people to be turned down than to get their license granted as a pro in the UK. And often, lots of fighters will have to go and do a training session in front of the board if their experience doesn't quite meet the criteria to turn pro. Now, obviously, in this day and age, with social media influencers turning pro with no previous experience, now that is completely different. I don't know the details behind them getting their licenses, but they are notable exceptions to 99.9% of pros. So once you get your professional license, in order to build your career, you're going to have to go down a few paths. Now, this is why it's important to get as much amateur experience and win as many titles as an amateur as you can. Because if you can win the Olympics and get a big promoter from the get-go, it's going to make your life a hell of a lot easier dealing with ticket sales. Having a big promoter is key because it keeps you active, keeps you getting paid, and it keeps you progressing up the ladder. I would say around 90% of boxers don't get major promoters signing them from their debut. So most boxers will have to go on the small hall shows and build their name as professionals. Now, professional boxers in this instance will get ticket deals from the promoters. Now, what this means is you have to sell a certain amount of tickets to cover all of your expenses to fight. And backtracking slightly, you're also going to have to pay medical fees and brain scan fees every year, and you have to pass them in order for your license to be renewed. Now, this is strict. It's a dangerous sport, and this is in place for the safety of all boxers. But anyway, with ticket deals, the expenses you're going to have to pay is around £1,000 to £1,500 to the promoter that's hosting the show. You're going to have to pay your opponent if you want to be a prospect that's up and coming, and that can vary anywhere from around £1,500 to £2,500 and even beyond. And then whatever's left, you split with your manager and promoters, as well as your cuts man. So in essence, professional boxers in the UK are going to have to sell at least £3,000 worth of tickets for every fight just to cover expenses. Whatever's left over is split. So you're making very, very little money even if you're selling over those ticket prices. If you can't sell enough tickets to cover those expenses, it comes out of your own pocket to fight. So lots of boxers can't sell over 100 tickets or so 4 times a year, especially when they're doing all their own promotion themselves. So it writes off many careers before they even begin. Now, this takes me to the journeymen, the fighters that are fighting every week. Journeymen don't have to sell tickets. They're called journeymen because typically they travel all around the country and fight every week. Part of the expenses the prospect pays goes to the journeyman for the fight. So now we know that you need to be an experienced boxer to turn professional, and you need to sell tickets to become a prospect. you start to understand why some people go down the journeyman road rather than scraping money for fights on the way up once or twice a year. Journeymen can fight every week and they don't have to worry about selling tickets. And as I previously touched upon, they can do this every week. Granted, they're not knocked out. So let's start to talk about the purpose of journeyman in boxing. How does boxing benefit from fighters that always lose? So we've already established that prospects have to sell tickets. And in order to do that, you have to build a fan base, which means you have to be actively fighting in the ring. This is where you'll begin to build a fan base across your first few fights. But more importantly, journeymen give you such valuable experience. Now this is where understanding the differences between amateur boxing and professional boxing make a significant difference in your understanding in boxing. Amateur boxing at most consists of 3 3-minute rounds. The gloves are a lot more padded, the wraps are a lot softer. The style of boxing historically in the amateurs has always been a more point scoring based style, suited for the shorter fights, which is a stark contrast to professional boxing, which starts at 4 rounds but goes all the way up to 12 rounds. The pace is a lot slower, you have to plant your feet a lot more, the gloves are a lot smaller, the wraps are a lot harder. In most instances in amateur boxing, especially historically, you had to wear a head guard, which you don't in professional boxing. So most people that have never stepped into a ring don't quite understand the difference between amateur boxing and professional boxing actually physically when you get in the ring. You're basically taking a few years to mold yourself into a completely different fighter that you've been ever before, because professional boxing requires you to change your style. And it isn't something that happens overnight, and it's not something that can be emulated in sparring, because 1, you don't have the pressure of a fight night, and 2, as I've touched upon, the equipment in pro boxing is brutal. You need to get used to taking shots with those gloves, going longer distances over the rounds, pacing yourself better. And this is something that if you did straight away against fellow prospects, so many fighters would get knocked out before their career even gets going. Now what journeymen do is jump in and give you that experience. They rough you up. They show you all the tactics up close, which you can use later on in fights. They'll hit you, they'll hurt you, and if you're not switched on, they'll beat you. And there are so many instances from my own career in which these guys have provided me valuable experience that I used in hard fights down the line against undefeated opponents. Experience that I wouldn't have had I not have boxed them. The way to kill time in a round, how to rough people up, how to get yourself out of danger. Kristian Laight, for instance, has boxed tons of future champions in the sport. His opponents range from world champions Anthony Kakachi, Lee Wood, Terry Flanagan, Jazza Dickens, Derry Matthews, Kevin Mitchell, Tyrone Nurse, and so many others. And this then takes me to the skill, the misunderstood skill of journeyman. In 300 fights, with 95% of his opposition being undefeated or prospects with a higher winning ratio, in 300 fights, he's only been stopped 5 times. Now, you begin to understand who the good journeymen are when you look at their knockout loss ratio. Yes, they've all got losses, but have they been stopped many times? Those that haven't been stopped know how to box. They're in there using every trick in the book that they picked up through their years as a professional boxer, but typically from their career before as an amateur. Lots of these guys were competitive, if not championship winning amateur fighters. It's just that they can't box as an up and coming prospect with the business structure that's in place. But they still want to be professional boxers alongside jobs. Most of them are usually working during the week, and they want to provide a valuable service to the sport. And for instance, this is another opponent I boxed that was a journeyman and had a losing record. But when lots of these guys want to win, they can really quickly up their levels and give you hard fights, because at the end of the day, they're seasoned boxers, especially the ones that don't get stopped. It's not just having an iron chin and incredible will. It's knowing how to make shots miss. It's knowing how to smother. It's knowing how to counterpunch, using feints and keeping your opponent off balance. These are all skills that can take you up the pro ladder in boxing. The only thing that's holding these guys back is the business structure in place. So rather than not pursue a professional career or go completely out of pocket selling tickets, they go on the road. They box as journeymen and box every week. And they test the future champions and up and comers. And for those prospects coming up, they need to fight. And the nature of boxing, especially on the small hall scene, is very brittle. Fights are constantly falling through. I've had so many experiences where I've had a fight pull out on the day and I have to refund everyone's ticket personally. the months of training that you put in as the prospect go out the window, and you don't fight and you don't get paid and you don't progress. Whereas if a journeyman gets the call a day before saying there's a boxer that needs a fight, they'll travel, step into the ring with you on a day's notice, sometimes even on the same day, and make sure that you are consistently fighting. Oftentimes they will out-hustle and outwork prospects and do enough to get a victory over a young prospect. But promoters that are pushing big ticket sellers won't want their fighter to lose to a journeyman. So although they've got lots of losses and usually draws, there's a strong case that lots of journeymen could potentially have more wins and draws on their records. This doesn't always happen, but it happens more often than you'd think. And if a journeyman consistently beats prospects, or even worse, knocks prospects out, promoters won't want to match their young prospects and future stars against them. Now, you know the skilled journeyman from, as I say, their stoppage records in their losses. If you look at someone that's had 50, 100, 200, 300 fights, and they're stopped very, very, very rarely, and they're consistently fighting undefeated prospects, you know that they're a good boxer, and you now know the reasons they're doing what they're doing. And the toughness of these guys is just insane. As I say, typically they'll do their boxing around the job. Now, using an instance in one of my fights, I boxed a journeyman called Hallett, and I've become good friends with Hallett after our fight, and I've tracked his career, and he's had about 95 more fights since we boxed, and I think he's won 2. But when we boxed, I hit him with a body shot and put him down, and he told me after that body shot broke his ribs. Now, he boxed the next week and the week after that, and not only did he get up from the body shot, he finished the fight, and finished the fight strong too, because he was under pressure and he had to pull out his skill set. Now, if journeyman or any boxer gets stopped in the ring, they have to serve a 28-day medical suspension, which stops these guys from working, even if they get cuts. So that's journeyman. They provide such valuable experience, show you the tricks of the trade that serve you well later on in fights when you do box undefeated fighters. Usually, journeymen are fighters that want to have a career in professional boxing, but simply can't sell the tickets to be able to do it as a prospect. So they fight every week and leave a positive impact on the sport, bringing through future champions by giving them the experience that they need early on in their careers.